Welcome to Americana Country Interview, chats with artists you hear weekly on our radio show, Americana Country, now heard in Kentucky and Tennessee on stations and around the world on your favorite streaming service. Today we talk with singer-songwriter, Americana artist Travis Cooper. How you doing, Travis?
Very good, Jay. Great to see you, man. Great to
Good to
see you.
see you too. Hey, you got a brand new album out, I hear, and we, of course, are playing it here at Americana Country. Before we talk about your new album, of course, we can go back to the other album when I first met you,
Yeah.
and back when Americana Country first started, in fact.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. You grew up in Wisconsin, not quite the hotbed of country or Americana music. Uh, Give us a little bit of your background, your early days, your early influences.
Yeah. Um, my mom and dad, well, my dad in particular had a really good album collection, and um, I I got into that at a pretty early age, and a lot of the stuff that he had was some of the singer-songwriter stuff, but like Southern rock as well. But I mean, it stretched from everything to John Prine to the Allman Brothers and Marshall Tucker and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So Zeppelin, and so I got into all that, and uh, and maybe even prior to that, I was having a big imagination and wanting to, write little stories or come up with things. Um, I mean, it hit me pretty early on. So about age 14 is when I finally made the decision. And in fact, January 1990, I was like, I wanted to take it more serious. And a couple blocks away, I had a guitar teacher there, who was doing he would do like classic country stuff in 50s, 60s rock and roll.
Yeah.
And but he was a really good teacher, and especially where I'm a slow learner. I want to get things right, and I take my time when I learn stuff. So he was really patient with me, and so for those formative years of learning guitar, he was really good. And I didn't touch lead guitar at first. I played strictly rhythm guitar for maybe the first 2 years,
Hmm.
and then so he took me as far as he could with that kind of stuff. And then I had another teacher in a nearby town, and he was starting to kind of teach me like the blues, the lead blues stuff and things like that, because I was into blues as well. And so I went with that teacher, and then I was lucky enough in about 1994 to I went to Summerfest in Milwaukee, and as soon as I came in the place, I heard this band doing Allman Brothers extremely well. And for as young as I was, I'm like, nobody's doing that around here. And it was Greg Koch, the really good guitar player out of Milwaukee. And I made connections with him. Now I wasn't able to get lessons with him all the time, but it was just really nice. He was really good at and there wasn't a lot of people doing it at the time, but I mean, blending everything from, I mean, he could be playing a guitar line and it would be anything from Hendrix and Chet Atkins in the same
Wow.
couple of lines. And
Wow.
I'm like, wow. And, Jerry Reed and
Yeah.
different ones like that. So
That's quite extreme.
it was extreme. And he had a sense of humor about how he did it. He's all over YouTube now, and he's doing pretty well. But yeah, so there was a line of teachers that kind of helped me with the music. The writing stuff I had to kind of like do on my own, um, gravitating towards the songwriters of like Prine, Guy Clark, Towns, and Chris Whitley especially,
Mhm.
who I got to meet on a couple occasions when he would come through Wisconsin to play,
Hmm.
and he was huge. So I was trying to blend the combination of just interesting guitar playing with lyrics that had some meaning to them.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, you said you started early at 14, maybe taking lessons. Do you remember your first guitar? Do you still have your first guitar?
I don't. I wish I did. I sold it to a guy who I still know, and so I do think about it. It was a mid '60s Gretsch,
Yeah.
solid body. Well, but
Yeah.
it was more like a student model. But I
Right.
learned later that Rory Gallagher was probably the only one that really had that particular model, and he would use it.
Wow.
He'd use it for slide playing, and he's another favorite of mine too.
Yeah,
So
Roy Gallagher, quite the guitarist.
he was great.
So your buddy that has your first guitar, is he not going to sell it back to you?
I haven't asked him. He was the same guy that I was at a show and he saw me playing my slide guitar,
Right.
and he asked me. He goes because he was a neighbor of mine for many years, and he said, "Hey Trav, I'm building banjos now." He goes, "Would you like to have one?" I said, "Well, of course." And he goes, "Well, I see you're doing the finger style thing." He goes, "It might be something that you'd like." And he had built one. He's just a resourceful guy, and to this day, I've taken it to other guys who are great banjo players, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Who made this?"
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
so do you play the banjo in any of your
a,
shows?
a little bit, and I want to incorporate it a little more. I'm trying to find some songs that would be fitting for it, and kind of break up the rather than just doing the songwriter who plays the same strummy chords for 4 hours. I like to I
Yeah.
like to incorporate different things in it.
Well, you have a national and you play your national resonator guitar
Hmm.
on most of your album, and of course, it's
Yeah,
on your latest album cover as
yeah,
well, right there.
yeah, yeah,
And but do you play rhythm guitar on other tracks on your albums?
yeah. I try and write songs. I try and leave a little bit of stuff open for I'll write and play my parts, and I'll try and um, bring other guys in who I respect and love their playing and say, what can you add to this? And that's why maybe I've taken the Bob Dylan approach of like, the records are going to be different than the live shows. And so I try and leave that's why I bring in good players down here in Nashville to say, hey, what can you do with this? And this is how far I'm going to take it. This is how I would play it in a live show. And
Hmm.
then they're kind of the front, the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned several bands that influenced you, Allman
mhm.
Brothers Band and those guys. What was your first band like? Was it a mixture of all of those?
It, typically in the beginning it was a lot of blues rock because at that time I didn't like where country music had gone. Even about 1990 is when 89 or 90 is when started things really changed for country.
Yeah.
So I wasn't listening to a lot of it. I mean, I liked the older guys and still do, and that's what I gravitate towards.
Yeah.
But yeah, the early bands were probably were kind of trios and um, not just a trio because we had a horn saxophone player, a couple different ones that were really cool. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we would do a blues rock thing, and it was cool with the saxophone because we would him and I would do call and response kind of things, and so we had that kind of relationship. So it worked out really well. And some of those early bands were pretty fun. I was playing with people who were a lot older than me
Yeah.
because nobody in my age group was really digging
Nobody else
it.
liked Mississippi John Hurt. Is that what you're saying?
No, they didn't.
Or knew who he
No,
was?
no, and that's the thing. I felt kind of isolated and
Yeah.
because I was the kind of guy that if I was listening to Clapton or the Allman Brothers and I would read their interviews and they were always pointing back to Robert Johnson or
Yeah.
Mississippi
Yeah.
John Hurt,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, who are these guys? So I had to dig in.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and nobody was really doing that, especially and not even maybe not even the extreme of the people I was playing with, although they were pretty well
Yeah.
informed.
Well, I used to start Americana Country Monday morning with Mississippi John Hurt songs. So
Oh,
I love Mississippi John Hurt.
that's a great way to do.
Yeah,
That's a great way to do it.
all of the old blues guys, the Mississippi and South Side
Yeah.
Chicago blues guys, they're great. So you had you had several bands growing up. About
Mhm.
what age? 14, 15, you were in the bands? They're
Yeah,
still
uh,
in,
that
in
was a little bit
existence?
later. Probably when I was actually able to add some lead stuff into the rhythm stuff I was doing. So, um, I probably waited a little bit. I was probably 17 or 18
Yeah,
before I started joining some of the other guys because I wanted to do a lot of woodshedding on my own. I wasn't ready for the stage,
yeah,
and in my opinion, I think more people should do that. I mean, there's no shame in it.
Yeah.
You need to get used to the stage eventually, but you got to have some groundwork before you
So
go
you're
there.
not a fan then, like me, and I say this gently because my wife yells at me when I say this. You're not a fan of um, the overnight shows, the voices and all that stuff.
No, no, I don't watch them. I get more frustrated about them than anything.
I mean, I have to admit, several of them have talent, but
Yeah.
it's just something about paying your dues. I mean, I mean, it's you can tell by a person's vocals, the way they play, if they've paid their dues or not. But oh, I'm not okay. I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
I'm
So
with you. I'm with you on that. And there's yeah, like I said, there's no shame in,
yeah, yeah,
it's hard. It's difficult.
yeah,
And
yeah.
um,
So were you sneaking into nightclubs playing at 17?
I was pretty young. I was at least 18 or 19 probably when, because we were doing a lot of rehearsals and stuff. And then, yeah, about that age. So I was too young to be in there. And that, it didn't always cause a problem.
Yeah,
Hopefully, but again, when you're playing with those older guys and whether you're playing in the bars or whatever,
yeah.
um,
They covered for you, right?
well, I mean, yeah, but you knew you had to deliver the goods.
Sure.
And,
Expectations are a little higher.
well, yeah, and I knew at that time that I was replaceable. And I'm just a kid learning this stuff, and
Right,
I'm trying to play with the big boys,
right.
and
Yeah,
and I think I've held on to that for a long time. It's humbling. It's
yeah,
like, I wasn't trying to be a hot shot guy. I was trying to, like, I was playing with a band. It's a
yeah,
group effort, and
yeah,
so that was the mindset anyway.
yeah,
Even then.
yeah. So you were playing music. Were you playing the resonator then, the National then, or just rhythm guitar?
I had a really cheap one back in the day, and it was just something I would just, if I was porch picking or something, I kind of messed with it for a while, and it wasn't really until later on. Well, and again, guys like before we mentioned Rory Gallagher and Chris Whitley,
Yeah,
and then taking it back to the old Mississippi guys. So yeah, I got serious about that later, and it is a whole nother. It's a whole nother can of worms because it's tuned differently, and your whole approach is different,
sure.
and that's something too that when you take that on a stage, you better be ready. I think even Dwayne Allman, they said back in the early, like when he first started, everybody's like, "Oh no, he's doing it again." But
Right. Well, they
but
didn't know
yeah,
what it
he got
was. It
yeah,
was something new. They didn't know what it was.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I think he heard Ry Cooder do it, and then he's like, "Yeah, I
right.
think I could get into that." But there is a learning curve for that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
tell me a little bit, Trevor, a little bit more of your history. What were some of the best, or what were some of your first band names?
We had one called the trio that well, let's see. Trying to trying to think of the blues band that we had first, but Delta Mud was one of them.
Oh, nice.
That was a little power trio that we had. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
We had one, the one with the saxophone player and everything like that. We were called the Blacklight Band,
Okay.
and
Very
and
60s sounding.
very, but that's the kind of music we did too.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we had a singer who, she could belt it out like Janice,
Oh,
and
nice.
very good blues kind of thing.
Nice.
And so it was fun. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
couple there's names from the past I haven't thought about for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a little funky garage band growing up, and we had some terrible names as well. We had Blue Grape and the Trojans, and there was the 60s. But anyway,
Yeah.
speaking of, you did that in the band thing, and then you left Wisconsin. When did you leave, and when did you arrive in Nashville?
I was making a couple different trips here over the years before I officially moved down. I wanted to see what it was all about. I think 2002, I had taken a trip, and Nashville was just kind of a stop along the way. And uh, I thought, well, I need to get more into this. Um, and so, I mean, in 2008 was when we officially moved down here, but um, like I said, I was trying to do research and things like that beforehand because I had no interest of and still don't of getting signed. I mean, it'd be different if they were on the same page as me and we had a working relationship that way. But what I was doing previous to coming down here was I was interested in the recording studios and the guys who were working them.
Right.
And so I tried to read up on a lot of those guys before I came down, and then it was a magazine article of how I learned about Randy Coors and him having a studio, and so I read about him, and then just made arrangements to meet up with him, and that's how that kind of relationship got started.
Yeah.
Um, and Brent Mason, the famous session guitar player down here, his brother and I used to talk before I moved down here. And when I was asking him about studios and stuff, he recommended one, and I did a couple albums over there. But Randy was a guy who I wanted to meet just because, again, it was blending the same kind of influences that we had, because I know Randy comes from a blues background as well.
Hmm.
Playing, he's one of the premier slide guys down here. So I wanted to meet up with him, and that's been fruitful because we're on the same page when we're in the studio. But
Hmm.
there was a lot of studying back in Wisconsin to find out what this could be and what I wanted it to kind of be.
Yeah.
Because again, the music business people didn't. We just happen to live in the same town. There's not much else than that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So you said you dropped by Nashville on your way to somewhere else. Is that one of those stories where you had a tire went flat and you were in front of RCA Studio B? Is that what you're trying to tell
No,
me?
nobody famous appeared at my peril. But
Yeah.
I mean, no, it was we were just passing through. We went down to the bike rally down there in Florida,
Oh, okay.
and that's what it was at the
Bike
time.
week, bike
Huh?
week, bike
Yeah,
week.
yeah. I had a motorcycle at that time. I
Yeah.
don't have one now because this traffic low. It's suicidal out
It's
there now.
crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I got rid of my last one last year. So anyway,
Oh,
yeah,
it's tough, ain't
it's
it?
tough. I still every spring I still think, I don't have one.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
what did you ride?
I did have I had a Harley Sportster back in the day. That's what I started with, and then a Super Glide after that.
Wow,
Yeah,
nice. Yeah,
yeah,
I started with a Sportster. Mine was a
yep.
'69,
Oh, nice.
and back in the old back when it's bare bones days,
Yep,
and then got a lowrider
yep.
and sport what was it, a night rider, is that what it was called? It was a special
Oh,
edition
oh,
uh with a Springer front end on it. I can't remember.
yeah,
Anyway, I
yeah.
sold it and I think made way too
Yeah.
much money. But anyway, that's enough of that. So
They were good days. They were good days. Yeah,
yeah, but I still miss it. I still miss it, and probably always will.
yeah,
Back to the music.
yeah.
So you first got to Nashville, and I think you said 2008 or nine,
8. Mm-hmm.
and you met up with a few people or that you had met kind of sort of,
Yeah.
and you've been a musician, you said, since 14. When did the writing bug kick in, or was it all about the same time?
Almost. I would say a year later. At 15, I was trying to like mess around with it. And I think I did that for a long time. And I had written a specific song. Nothing really ever came of it. But you got to do that trial and error thing. And then I had written, yeah, I mean, I wrote a song about my grandpa who had passed away, and that that song now is on the brand new record. But it's gone through different phases and changes. But yeah. I think with the writing and with the playing, because I was having a hard time finding people to commit to a band situation, and as it went on, that's why I tried to become self-reliant.
Yeah,
So that's why the playing became the how the playing developed, and I think that's how the writing thing just kind of naturally happened.
yeah,
Just always trying to improve with it.
So does
I,
writing come easy for you?
no, no, because uh, it's all work, and I look at the playing and the writing, and even I'm trying to get better as a singer. Those are all things that I'm trying to, again, the self-reliance thing. I wouldn't say it comes easy, but it's work I enjoy. Um, I think to be a great, I've always said it, to be a good writer or a great writer, you have to be a good and great reader.
Yeah,
And so, I always just try to read everything I could get my hands on. And so those are the things I try and let influence me, because everybody says, "Oh, I just write from my own experiences." I'm like, well, that's kind of boring. I don't have that. I don't have that exciting of a life to
so
just,
you're telling me you're from Wisconsin, I know,
yeah.
but you didn't go over to Minnesota to Hibbing and kind of go to the places where Dylan grew up or anything like that, or
I never did. And I've heard you've probably heard the story too. I've heard Dylan even went to go see Neil Young's home just because of what he thought of him. Just
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really something.
yeah,
I never did that. Uh, I can see why people do, and I don't know. I think the big thing with me was like waiting for some people, certain performers, to come to Wisconsin, and being right there for, with my ticket to go see him, and let that kind of wash over me, because that was the world coming, because I felt like I was a million miles away from everything.
sure,
But when those people would come around, um, it felt like it was a big deal. It was a
yeah,
really big deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So did you ever go to Muhlenberg County?
Haven't been there yet either.
My
I,
wife
I,
and my wife
I,
and I. Now I'm not a songwriter.
yeah,
I love music. I obviously have a radio show, but my wife and I went. We're both retired now,
yeah,
and we both went up for John Prine. John Prine. They opened up a memorial park right by the Rochester Dam
yeah.
on the Green River. Obviously.
Nice.
So we went up, and it was just me and my wife there, and we took a bunch of pictures, and we went up about 2 or 3 more miles. The seat of the county, Muhlenberg County, is Central City, and they have the Everly Brothers are from there, so they have
Oh,
Everly Brother. They have Muhlenberg County Music Museum, which is half Everly Brothers, half John Prine. So
I had no idea they were from there.
yeah,
Wow.
we
Wow.
enjoyed that. We're both Everly Brothers fans, and of course, I'm a big John Prine fan, and my wife
Yeah.
doesn't care for him, but
Well,
that's okay. That's okay.
it seems like he's more for the guys.
Yeah,
Maybe that's it. It's the rough voice and everything,
maybe
probably.
it's like a Three Stooges thing. My wife hates the Three Stooges, and I love them. I still watch them when they come on in reruns.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hear. But speaking of pilgrimages, though, about a year ago, I finally did make it to the Delta Blues Museum.
Oh, nice.
I went there, and um, that was that was good to do. I had been wanting to do that since I was a kid, and so that felt good to do.
So,
Yeah.
did you go down to Mississippi to the Crossroads too?
I didn't, because I had a limited time, and I wasn't. I had no desire to sell my soul to the devil.
Well, yeah, yeah.
So,
That too. That little stumble in the action. Yeah.
yeah,
But anyway.
yeah. So, I mean, but it was really cool, and I wish I would have had more time, and I'll probably go back at some point.
But Dylan, in a 60 Minutes interview, and it's still on YouTube, parts of it,
Mhm.
uh, said that he can't write those songs
Yeah,
because
I saw that.
that was then and this is
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
And so, he's the perfect example of what you were talking about. And I've experienced. I'm old. I've experienced a lot of live concerts,
yeah,
and I sometimes I'm disappointed if I go to a concert and hear the band play exactly what's on the record. I want to
agreed.
hear them stretch out. I want
Yeah,
to hear them add a word or two or mess up a little bit to be
yeah,
human. I don't want to hear them sing with tracks.
yeah,
It's I was lucky enough to see John Prine 4 or 5 times back before he was big, and that kind of thing. And he was always an amazing artist, an amazing, and he was a storyteller in between the songs, which I
yes,
thought was really cool.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
getting back to you,
Well, yeah, no, it's great though, because the thing about Dylan, though, in the way he wrote then. yeah, you go through different things, and the quality of he still cares about the quality of the work though, and that part hasn't changed.
Right,
And
right,
and that's why you can go from Highway 61 Revisited to Time Out of Mind
right,
years later, and
right,
it he that's still it's still a masterpiece, arguably.
right.
So it's great.
You went in the studios with some of your friends you've already mentioned, and you cut a little album called Blood in the Inkwell.
Hmm.
And you did that right about the time we started Americana Country. And if I
Hmm.
remember correctly, our mutual friend uh, contacted me, either called me or came by and said, "Hey, there's a new guy you need to listen to. He's Americana, and you would really like him." And Kevin, of course, is who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure if he called me or he came by, and I'm not sure if you were with him or came by 5 minutes later or not. But uh, I think you brought your guitar that day or the next day, and you played live one or two tunes on the air.
that's right.
I
That's
think
right. I was a little nervous. I was because I don't do a lot of that, and I was nervous, and
you
I
did well. You did very
well,
good.
it never goes away, is what I'm trying to say. You always care, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, you did very well.
Thank
But
you.
that was a very nice album, Blood in the Inkwell, and I remember playing two especially great cuts that I remember playing, Thompsons and Terraplanes.
Yeah,
Poor Johnny D. Who's Poor Johnny D? And why is
that
he?
was that was a John Dillinger song,
Oh, John Dillinger
and
song. Okay,
yeah, and real quick, I had they had come to film the movie when I was still living in Wisconsin right beforehand. So, in this small town right where next to where we live, we got
yeah.
to watch like the bank scene,
Oh,
and
okay,
Johnny was right out the side of the window, Johnny Depp, and
yeah,
it was kind of cool. But I've been attracted to that kind of time period anyway. So,
yeah.
and then after they had come, I'd read the John Dillinger book, Dari, I can't think of the name. It was a really good the author's name, but it was a really good book. And from that book was what inspired the song, and especially and then seeing the town totally change to a 1930s kind of town. I
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah,
They could have kept it like that.
yeah,
I would have been okay with that.
yeah,
But yeah, so that's how that song got born.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other song that I think we wore out on that album is "Never Meant to Run." Uh,
Oh,
Give us
yeah.
a little bit about what that one, how you came up with that.
Real quick, that was a story that I heard back in middle school. And the English teacher at the time had told the story of this. And so I've never been able to track down the origin. I even sent her a message. I said, "Do you know what that's from?" And so I took liberties, to make it about, a Civil War kind of song, a guy who didn't really deserve, but in the heat of battle, everybody was running,
Sure,
and so he got hung for that.
it
And
happened.
yeah, yeah. And so I thought, yeah, that'd be a good line for a story. So I took liberties, but I've never been able to trace the origin of that.
Yeah,
Wish I could.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, I mean, it did happen. So
Yeah,
many, many times.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that brings us to a new album that you just have out. It's
Yes.
called Midnight Poetry. Love the album. We're playing three cuts off it on rotation, and one, of course, is
Awesome.
Midnight Poetry, the title track. When loneliness comes
Yeah.
creeping, and my favorite. Are you going to guess which one it is? I'm
Well,
old,
I
man.
would
Think
say
about it.
old turntable blues.
That's it. Old turntable blues. Old turntable
Yeah.
blues. So did you get a little melancholy one day and write that tune and stick a little vinyl on the turntable?
Actually, I had really big hopes that um, part of that, the reason that song came along is because I wanted, I'm a record collector, and and I wanted to have this on vinyl. That was the initial plan. So I did. It was a song I had kicking around for a long time, and finally finished it. And it's just about a guy who just has a healthy addiction to vinyl records, and so
This guy right here.
yeah. So I'm like, there's people who can relate. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the humorous song. I don't usually write a lot of humorous songs. I certainly like humor. It just doesn't come up a whole lot in the writing. And I thought, well, all these other songs are kind of, somewhat serious, I guess. But yeah, I thought that could be comic inflection.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But yeah, I'm glad you're playing Midnight the title track because
yeah. It's a little long, but it's FM radio.
well, I wanted to one of the things that I've really tried to do even from the last album to this one was um I I just became more fascinated by my melody, and I thought that's something that's kind of missing from music these days.
Yeah,
And I like the bluesy, drony stuff too, but there's something about great melodies. And so I tried to start listening to people more who had that.
yeah,
And so that song hopefully is a reflection of that, and especially taking it. I know you said there's a length to that song, but it's kind of like, it's bringing a little bit of the Clapton Layla,
yeah, yeah.
influence in, and then the gospel thing at the end.
Sure.
Those are all things I was just trying to kind of put together, and
Yeah.
just stuff you don't hear these days anymore.
So let me ask you the question before I let you go here. Are
Yeah,
you going to put a couple of blues songs on your next album?
the next album is actually organically kind of bluesy. It's got a little bit of I mean, God willing, if we can make another album, these are very expensive to make.
Yes, I know.
I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah,
and everybody gets free music these days, so it's kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
tough.
That's true. Yeah,
But and with that, yeah, there's some natural bluesiness going on, and I'm okay with that.
yeah.
So yeah,
Let me ask you one more question, and I'll let you go. What is on your turntable? What are you listening to, Travis, right now?
this may surprise you. I had been listening to some because I get in certain moods, and I actually had some Beethoven Symphony 6 on, and Symphony 6 and Symphony 7.
Not,
So again, the
not,
melody thing.
not Chuck Berry's "Roll Over Beethoven," but Beethoven,
Yeah, the real thing.
the original, the
Yeah.
original. All
Yeah.
right. Hey, Travis, thank you so much for joining us today on this version of interview. We appreciate you so much. Love the new album, Travis Cooper. It's called Midnight Poetry. Get it, download it, go buy it. He makes more money when you go buy it. And
Thank you so much,
I,
Jay.
I hate downloads.
I'm with you. I'm
But
with you.
anyway, thanks,
So
Travis Cooper, for being here for Americana Country interview. We'll see you next time.
take care, everybody.